Welcome to Season 4 of the Funding Love Adoption Podcast with Mal and Kate.
We are two adoptive moms that seek to love, support, and elevate all corners of the adoption triad while running our nonprofit, Funding Love.
Funding Love creates post-adoption experiences that strengthen bonds, build community, and restore people.
And the Funding Love Adoption Podcast exists to bring education and awareness to those both inside and outside the adoption community.
So pour yourself your favorite beverage and pull up a chair because everyone has a seat at our table.
Together, we are Funding Love,
the podcast.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Wow. We are here for episode 6 of season 4 of the Funding Love podcast. And we both kind of come cozy today.
Here we are.
Fall is sinking in. I mean, we both live in Florida, so the fall crisp weather isn't exactly what
there
other people might be feeling.
We're closer.
We're closer. But
sometimes we can we like bring it to ourselves. Wearing, having a nice warm beverage and cozy clothes is all we need.
And, you just kind of like knock down the AC in the studio for a bit and get cozy. So happy fall, y'all. And I can't believe we're here for episode 6.
Episode 6. And it has been so fun being with you every episode instead of being virtual. And
I agree.
This has been so fun.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, it has. So
I'm so glad I moved to Florida.
Me too. So we're gonna wrap episode 6. And talking about the pre-adoption, right? The stuff that happens before placement. Mm-hmm. We're going to wrap that whole season, that whole topic by talking about openness, open adoption, closed adoption. What does that mean?
Why is it important?
Yeah. Why is it important? And having those preferences and being honest with yourself with those preferences, because it can be uncomfortable when you know nothing about it. And so to be honest is important. But yeah, let's talk about that, because I know we've had people on the podcast before who have talked about what openness is.
Yes.
So they have said that openness is basically just not having your documents sealed. So if you know the name,
if you have access
to documents of your birth family and know their names, that's openness.
Yes.
So not to say that I would disagree, but I would argue that the modern definition of what we are trying to experience and replicate in our lives for openness would not be that. It would be far greater than that.
Yes.
Right. So maybe technically by definition, that might be what it means, because it would be the opposite of closed. Closed adoption would be that you would have no access, no information, no even ability to open those documents because they've been sealed by the state or wherever. So that would be closed. Which usually as adoptions, really not so much anything happening these days. I don't really know of any agencies unless it's for safety or something, but I don't really know if even that's the case.
Right.
We're talking adoptions that were in the 70s, early 80s.
Correct.
That was the case.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I feel like when people say open and closed, they don't mean that. They don't mean, I have access to the information.
Yeah.
I feel like now if someone says we have an open adoption, it means that they have an open line of communication and are sending or receiving updates at the very least.
Correct.
And physically seeing each other and spending time together at the very most.
Yes.
Wouldn't you say?
Yes. And I think that there is
whole scale.
Oh my gosh, a whole scale. But really it comes down to there is an attempt and a constant effort to keep a relationship going, whether that be via text, whether that be a FaceTime or whatever we were saying, actually meet up in-person visits. But there's an attempt to keep that relationship active.
Right.
For me, because you could say, oh yeah, I've met my, my daughter's met her birth mom once.
Right.
Although yes, that's open. For me,
it's not currently.
For me and my success of what open adoption would be, wouldn't be success for me where there's been a one-time visit. To me, it's an ongoing effort.
Right.
For the length of our child's childhood until they're an adult and they can maintain that relationship on their own.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Now I will give the disclaimer because we have to do those of we recognize and acknowledge that open adoption isn't always healthy or the best option. And it's always best to keep the child in mind. Or there might be a situation where a birth parent has passed or is incarcerated and you just literally don't have that option.
Correct.
But for the most part, we believe that open adoption is the healthiest for all parties, not just the adoptee and not just the birth mom. I truly feel like it has been such a benefit to me as well.
No, I mean, 1,000%.
Yes.
I think it helps me to continue to have perspective year after year of just from the beginning of the gravity of the decision that was made and the honor it is to raise this child. Like, I think to continually to have that perspective by having this woman in my life, her mom, it reminds me often of that. So I think, yes, it is a great benefit, but also like the depth of this relationship of this, our children have two moms, like a mom that birthed them and carried them, and then a mom that is raising them, and to know that there's like this cool, special, like uniqueness of that relationship.
And
I don't know.
Both love them
and both
so
love
much.
them deeply, and
Yes.
it's the same. And yeah, it's just a cool thing. But I've grown as a person by having this openness and by having this relationship with my daughter's birth mom. So
yeah,
I think it is. So let's talk about like as a prospective adoptive parent, learning about open adoption and being at the agency and filling out the paperwork to say, do you want to open adoption or closed adoption? What would you say? Because I mean, I know we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but what would you say to encourage them to do it? Like, what would you say? Okay, yes, you need. What I would say, I'm going to advocate for open adoption because of this.
I mean, goodness, I don't see many downsides to open adoption at all. So I would advocate for an open adoption because it's been so amazing in our life. I feel like.
What if I say I'm scared though?
I'm scared. That's what I was. Yeah. So like going through the fears of it, like I am fearful that she is going to want her child back. First of all, she can't. So like put that out of your mind. And she might, I mean, all birth moms might struggle with that regret or the thought. I mean, we all have what if thoughts about anything in our life. So then to say that it was wrong of her to have a what if thought, that's not wrong of her to have those thoughts. So, but for her to actively want or come kidnap her child away, that's a Lifetime movie. That does happen because we have had people on our show before that happened to. However, it is so extremely rare. This is not the norm. It's not the common. It's not the guarantee of an open relationship. I would in fact say, based on my experience, it's the opposite. Correct. Literally, my son's birth mom this week posted a post on her social media saying that she doesn't regret her decision. And I think it's because we have relationship with one another. She has access to her son. He has access to her. And she can see his life, be a part of his life. Yeah. And it like participate in that with him. And that helps to bring her peace and joy. Yeah. Versus regret. Or versus like, I wonder what's happening. I don't know what's going on. The mystery, which leads to doubts and which leads to anxiety and all of those things. So yes, having that openness and ability for the birth family to see the growth and the joy and the person that their child is becoming, and being able to participate in that, hopefully as open as welcomed by either side. But I would say fear is a bad reason to not do open adoption. Yes. Because we've said this before, it's scary, but do it scared. Right. Like that's with anything in life. Like it's scary, but do it scared because the benefit, forget you as adopted parent, even let's just say for the sake of this, forget the birth parents' feelings. It is keeping and maintaining this for your child. Right. For their ability to know where they came from, their ability to understand their identity, to see who they look like, to know why they have this or whatever. And even like, to be honest, medical records. And not that's why you do it, but it is a benefit to say, okay, I can you can just reach out to his birth mom and say, hey, did you deal with this? Do you have this allergy? Have you had family history of this? Right. In a non-threatening way. Right. Yeah. It's so important. It's so true. Yes. So explain to us like the openness that you have just for perspective. Yeah. So with the way our journey happened was we agreed to an open adoption, But in the beginning, it wasn't the way it is now. So in the beginning, our agency was kind of the mediator. Like our first meeting together, we had at the agency.
Okay.
And so we were able to meet in like a neutral room, and we had, people there that could help us navigate conversation.
Okay.
After that, we moved towards meeting in a neutral place. Like we would go to a Chick-fil-A or a coffee shop. We did that a few times. And then I think our biggest growth and relationship growth happened in Walt Disney World. She lives in the Orlando area. And so we were down there vacationing, and we invited her to come spend a day with us at Walt Disney World. And it was just such a great place. Again, it's like a neutral place. It was a place where we had things to do, and it helped, the conversation flow because we were having fun in Disney.
Yeah.
And it was really a great place for us to build trust and to build a friendship on top of just
have fun together too.
Yeah,
have fun
exactly.
Yeah.
Which is such a huge part of funding love. I mean, that's why
all goes back to Disney for us, doesn't it?
what we do, right? It always goes back to Disney. And so as time went on, we exchanged phone numbers. In the beginning, we exchanged emails.
Yeah.
Then it moved to phone numbers, and then we followed each other on social media. And so now we just kind of have access through all of that.
Yeah.
I would say we don't email as much as anymore because, email is kind of formal, but we text and we DM on Instagram and tag each other and things on Facebook.
Yeah.
And we do still see her regularly, especially now that we have moved here. So for us, it moved from like semi-open, I guess, to more open to now. I would say we're fully open.
Yeah, you're full. There's no.
She's come to our home. She's come to our home, and we've celebrated birthdays together.
Yeah.
And she really is just like an extension of his life. So it's been cool to see how it has changed gradually.
Yeah.
So have you had that experience in your adoption where things have changed gradually? Because I know that change can happen all kinds of ways.
Yes, and I would say it's always for me.
And your adoption, by the way, is shorter than ours. It's like half the amount of time we've had in ours.
Correct. So so our oldest is only 4.5.
Yeah, and our oldest is 8.5. So literally half.
Literally, yeah. And I would say it's always difficult to navigate when you truly care about the other person's feelings and where they are. And so I have always felt, okay, so my role here as the adoptive mom is to make sure she knows that she's welcome.
Yes.
Like she's welcome to text me, call me, we're here. What do you need? And so if I continue to say, okay, I'm going to keep this open, and she knows she can always reach out, I kind of let her hopefully feel comfortable enough to say, hey, I need this, or here's a picture. Could I have a picture? Could you send me a video? All of those things. So I've made it a habit. I mean, I would say in the beginning, we're strangers.
Yes.
So it's a little bit awkward. So you just try to like keep that open. And so as the years have gone on, we know each other more. We know each other better as humans and as friends and as women. So it's felt easier to be able to have conversations and send those like heartfelt messages and those like deep things and videos and updates and all of those. And we've had in-person meetings. I mean, I don't know how many, 5, 6 of them. I don't really know how many at this point, but we always find Disney to be our common ground too, because we're Florida based. She's also lives in Florida. So we find that Central Florida is like our midpoint.
Yeah.
So we've met up in Disney Springs, shared coffee together, shared a meal together. We've done that a few times. We've had a couple park days as well. Did a Magic Kingdom day, Epcot day. Yeah, it is. And I think it's cool because that's Libby's happy place. That's where Libby thrives. So it's always fun to invite her into that and see like what lights Libby up. And so she can kind of get that. So I would say it is, we have an open relationship where we've met in person. We text weekly. So there's that openness. But I would say as far as the meeting in person, I do try to keep it open for her comfort level because I never want to, push if there's feelings of like hesitancy or feelings of nerves or whatever the emotions are that are being processed. I never want to push too intense in those to make anybody uncomfortable because this is ultimately for Libby. So as long as I keep it open, but it has been such a gift, cool as Libby gets older for her to talk so comfortably about her tummy mommy and her, she has a sibling as well through her Tell Me Mommy. So it's kind of fun for her to reference them and look back on memories and say, oh, remember when we did that? So it's been awesome. But it's not light.
No.
Like there isn't a lightness in this because there is so much loss that is on the front end and so much pain that is on the front end that doesn't just go away.
Right.
So navigating that, being on this side of the open adoption, oftentimes makes me feel, I'm just going to be open and honest, like makes me feel guilty, like I shouldn't be able to experience the joy because there's so much pain on the other side. So that makes it hard to, just for me to process. And I'm not trying to anybody.
No, I love that you're like sharing these open feelings because I feel like
an as adoptive parent sometimes.
But I feel like as adoptive parents, sometimes we feel uncomfortable talking about our big feelings because we feel like, oh, we're the ones that got the baby, so we're not allowed to share big feelings. But there are still big feelings, and I think it's great that you are vulnerable about that because people do relate.
Yeah, no, it is because as much as I can try to maintain an open relationship, and I always will, there is sometimes some walls that come that are put up, maybe just because of a tense moment, a tense feeling, an emotion, a feeling, whatever it is that comes in the way, and then I feel like being on the joyful side is hard when you see pain on the other side. Like, what is my role there? You know, what is my job as the adoptive mom? And I tried to just come back to that. What's best is what's best for my girls. So what is best is okay. So what is maintaining it, keeping the openness, and not pushing past being available. Yeah. And I'm not a counselor. I'm not somebody who's meant to heal and fix things because I often want to take that on as my burden to say, what do I need to do? What do I need to fix and change? Is it me? Is it me? Is it me? And so, that's hard.
Yeah,
it really is because I care so much about both of my girls, birth moms.
But I think that's a really great thing to share because as we're talking about open adoption, and I know that mostly our stories are very positive adoption stories. I mean, there are open adoption stories out there that are really hard. There are times when maybe a birth parent pulls away for a season because they're going through something hard, or there are situations where, it's just not possible, or locationally it changes and it makes things change. So not every story is always with an open adoption, like happy and easy. And even ours that sound that way are not always happy and easy. And so I think that when you're considering open adoption, you're thinking about it, it's good to keep that realistic view, but to also, like we've said about most things, it's always worth it. And I think that if you keep the focus on the child, the adoptee, and knowing how important it is for them to just know, like, even if your open adoption just looks like knowing their name and a little bit of medical history and, the paperwork that you have from the agency, and that's all you have right now, that's still something. And being able to share that with your child is still a benefit. Because I feel like in other episodes where we've had adoptees on, they've really shared how important it is to know, because otherwise you fill in the gaps. What was it that Allison said from our book club?
The Ghost Kingdom.
The Ghost Kingdom. Like they're going to think and wonder about that regardless of if you talk about it.
They're going to create their own picture of what that family looks like in their head, regardless.
Right. Yeah. And so no matter how many answers you do or don't have, I think it's always good to share, to even fill in just those tiniest pieces of their ghost kingdom, because it's going to help them as they grow older have a holistic view of themselves and a more realistic view of what they came from.
For sure.
And that's just going to help them like immensely as they grow. So.
Yeah. And I would say one thing that did help me, this was after we brought Libby home, but I that's when my heart for birth moms, I would say, exploded, was that after we brought Libby home and I started to invest in the relationship with her birth mom, where I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so much bigger than I knew before going in, like the gravity of the decision, what, like all of it, like the whole thing is very like, woof, like you feel so much in that whole process. And so my heart opened up even more. And that's when you and I had so many conversations in the Birth Mom program for Funding Love. But I would say is read books. There are some books that I've read, and we give to every magic maker who comes on the Birth Mom vacation. It's a book written by a birth mom, and it gives so much perspective. It's called Redefining Family: A Birth Mother's Journey to Wholeness, I think is what it's called. So great book. we've had her on the podcast like years ago. Like she was one of our first Alicia
ones.
Snyder. Yeah. So she's great. The way the book is written is beautiful. It's easy to read. It's poetic. It'll make you cry, but that would give you perspective as you're contemplating openness of the love that these mamas have for their babies that will never end. And so it helps you to understand that and helps you to just maybe feel the tug to keep that open for them and for their child, because that biology, that bond that mother and child have doesn't just go away. Right. So there is that draw and that need to fill in that gap. And I think that is my job as an adoptive parent, is to keep that open.
Yeah.
That's what I would say is, in openness, is to keep the door always open and say, hey, however, like, you're welcome in, you know?
And I would say it's doing what you said you were going to do.
Oh,
so many agencies have like an agreement plan that you sign. And sometimes it's like really minimal. Like we'll send updates to the agency or we'll have visits or whatever. But I know that sometimes in those moments when you're like, oh, I just want to parent your baby. And I know we've talked about how that shouldn't be your goal. But if you're making agreements to her if she's an expectant mom, you need to keep those agreements when she becomes a birth mom.
Yeah.
And if you said you were going to have visits, have the visits. If you said you were going to send updates, send the updates. Like, it's just so important to do.
And not just for the first year, but like always. Because knowing so many birth moms now in our circles, from just getting to know them through Funding Love, we've heard countless stories of saying, I was open for the first year, the second year, the third year kind of trailed off. Yeah. Now I haven't seen them in 10 years. Right. And you're like, wow, I haven't heard from them. I haven't seen a picture since they were 2. So those are stories of, and dare I say, I don't know the whole story. There's 2 sides to every story, but that falls on the adoptive family.
I would say so.
I would say so. Unless there's things we don't know, that falls on the adoptive family to say, okay, we got to keep this open. Unless there's some sort of unhealth. Life gets busy, but oh man, don't do it just because it's inconvenient or because it's scary. Like that is, so go into open adoption with an open mind and open heart and, like a willingness to learn about what that means. And don't be scared of it, because most agencies will direct you in that way. And hopefully they educate you as well.
And I would say, just like your child will build a ghost kingdom if they don't know things about their story, I feel like birth moms do that as well. And if you're talking about trying to help her to not live in regret or fear or doubt about what is happening with her child, an open line of communication is the best way to do that. Like, fill in the gaps for her. Like, when did they lose their first tooth? When did they take their first step? How, what extracurricular are they doing, baseball or dance? Like, even just little things like that help to, contribute to her piece about the decision that she made.
Filling her heart with that. Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. We've covered so much.
So much. We're just sitting here having a conversation. I love when these things happen organically. We always say, oh, we just need to hit play and start talking. And that's genuinely what we've done for this episode. And we hope that you feel better informed about open adoption, that our stories encourage you.
Yeah.
And that you can see the importance of doing the right thing by your child.
Yeah.
And their future.
Yeah. Don't be afraid, and always reach out to those. We say it over and over again, who've gone before you, because we still confide in each other. We've gone through the process. We have children, and it's still like, okay, how do you navigate this? How do you navigate this? What would you do here? So that is still an ongoing thing. Find your community, lean on them. This has been so fun.
So cheers. It's so fun. It's so fun. This means this wraps up season 4. We do have another bonus episode coming your way, so be sure to look for that. But this has been so great.
This has been awesome. An official end to this season. And let's talk about what's coming up, though, after the season. What's season 5 look like? Because we're going to continue talking about the adoption journey.
Yep. So our season 5 is going to be that middle part.
Yeah.
What are you doing when you get matched, after you got matched, the waiting between getting matched and the baby being born? What does it look like with the hospital?
Yes.
All of that, we're going to kind of cover that middle ground of adoption. And then hopefully season 6 will be the post-place adoption.
Yeah.
And We're really excited that you're here. Again, we hope that you are enjoying the content that we are creating. It is our goal to help bring awareness and education and support to all corners of the adoption triad. So be sure to hit subscribe, leave us a comment, and be sure to share it with someone that you know.
That's it. Awesome. Thanks for tuning into this episode and our entire season of the Funding Love Adoption podcast with Mel and Kate. Cheers. That's our wrap.
Cheers. Woohoo.